Hey you guys, welcome back. We have our uncoupling membrane installed. If you missed that video, go ahead and go check that out. I'll link it below. You need to know what an uncoupling membrane is and why it's important before you lay tile. If you've done that and you're ready to lay tile, let's start that process right now.
If the floor I'm working on is small enough, I like to create a template first, and then I just lay all the tiles flat on a floor in a spare room. It's easier if you're working with a large format tile to move the template around on the tiles than to try to heave the large tiles around. Whether you're using a template or not, you definitely need to make a plan before you start so you don't end up with a weird or small cut on one edge of the room. Depending on the size of tile you're working with, you may use a wet saw or a score and snap tile cutter, but because these tiles were so big, they're 2 feet by 4 feet, I had to use an angle grinder with a tile cutting blade because they wouldn't fit in any of the saws that I own. If you're gonna do this by hand with an angle grinder, it's just something that takes practice. One thing to focus on is you don't have to make a through cut on the first pass. Just go pass by pass and take your time. One of my favorite tools for cutting curvature in tile is a grinding cone. Once you make your cut, this tool is going to help you smooth down that edge and just clean up the cut without taking too much off. Once I've cut all my tiles, I like to lay them all in place in the actual space. Inevitably, there's usually a bump in the wall or some imperfection that you have to either do a little bit of fine tuning or extra cutting on, and you won't know until you lay them down. Once you do all your final trimming, I remove all of the tiles and get them out of the space and clean the floor really, really well because now we're going to prepare to actually adhere the tiles to the floor. Now you're going to mix your thin set according to the instructions on your bag. Once you get a little bit more comfortable with this, you're going to have a consistency that you prefer, but if this is your first time, just follow the instructions. You're going to do your initial mix, and then you're going to let it set. This is called the slaking time, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, but this is important because this is what allows the polymers in your thin set to accurately do their process. Then you wait for those minutes, however many it tells you on your product, and then you come back and mix again, and then you're ready to get started.
Just for you to kind of see how thick I'm mixing this, if you want an idea, you want it soft enough, you want it to hold its shape, but you also, when you trowel it out, right? But you also want, when I put my tile down on it and shake, you want good coverage. So you want your joints to be able to collapse. So you can go a little bit softer when you're working on the floor because you don't need the structural strength for it to dry like a wall. I like to go a little bit wetter, just like this. Sometimes you have to go a little thicker for a wall, but again, you want your lines to hold their integrity, but you do want them to be able to collapse really nicely and fill in all those voids because we don't want these voids between the finished tile job because that's going to create a weakness.
When you're making your thin set mixture, you have to think about how much thin set you can use at a time because you don't want your product to start crusting over in your bucket and go to waste. You also don't want it to start crusting over and then use it and have bad adhesion. The other thing is you have to think about as you trowel this out how quickly you can work. Don't trowel out a bunch on the floor or the wall or whatever you're working on that you're not going to be able to get to and then again have it dry over on that top coating. Only work in sections that you can keep up with. It's always better to mix more or spread more later than to have bad adhesion. In this case, I'm using a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch trowel. If you're doing a larger format tile, you're going to want a larger groove in your trowel, but just look up, there's a lot of guides online, depending on the size of tile you're using. If you're not sure, there's a lot of little charts you can look up or ask your tile supplier. One super important aspect of tiling, especially with a large format tile and really wanting to create that really strong bond between your floor or your wall and your tile, is back buttering. So in this first example, I have troweled the floor and then I'm back buttering the tile. You can see that one that was leaning over against the wall, meaning I've put a coating of thin set just flat and it helps create that suction between the trowel lines and that back buttered tile. But another option, whatever's easier for you, is maybe you want to put your trowel marks on the tile and then put your skim coat or your butter coat on the floor or the wall. You can do it either way, but don't skip back buttering with a large format tile. Sometimes with something smaller like a subway tile on a wall, most installers are not going to back butter every piece, but you definitely don't want to skip it with these big tiles. Most people have probably heard of tile spacers. What they do is they just help keep a consistent grout line so the space between each tile side to side is the same width. Now, if you haven't heard of them, they also have leveling spacers. There's a couple different options. The ones I have here that you can see between the tiles are a wedge type system. There's also spin type spacers that just push down. But what these do is help you keep a smooth top. And if your tiles are they have a little bit of lippage, like one's a little higher than the other, these help bridge that gap and adjust. These are a super handy tool, especially with large format tiles, to make those micro adjustments. Another tool I want to share with you guys is a Grabo. This is a battery powered vacuum suction tool. It's not necessary at all if you're using normal size tile, but if you're working with large format tile or you want to more in the future, I would consider investing in this. I have done large format bathrooms before without this, but I have tried suction cups and other suction tools that have failed, and I've broken and lost tiles, which when each tile is so many square feet, when you break one or lose one, you're losing quite a big piece of your investment. So this tool is really handy. I've never had it fail or drop a tile, and it's nice to be able to trust that it's holding onto the tile while you lower it into place or adjust it or move it around. It's just nice to have a handle instead of trying to grab these super carefully. Try to clean up any thinset that squeezes out as you do this now while it's wet, because it's a lot easier to clean it now than later when it's dry. You can cut it out or grind it out or sand it out if it does dry, but it's just easier to do it now. Some people use a rag, Clorox wipes, some people use a dry bristle toothbrush, but keep it clean as you're working. You'll be happy you did later on. The other thing I like to do when installing large format tile especially is really try to squeegee it into place. So putting weight on it, wiggling it. I like to hit it with a fist. Some people are also there's like a vibrating tool that you can run across the tile that really breaks down those trowel lines inside, but you just want to make sure that you're applying a lot of pressure. With a large format tile, I always like to give a longer dry time, because you have to think that it's just going to be harder for air and the drying process to happen sandwiched inside those larger pieces. The other thing that we're going to do once we can walk on the product is we're just going to take our spacers out. In this case, I'm using I think they're Perfect Level Master, and you can just kick these out, or you can use a mallet, whatever you're more comfortable with. If you want to learn how to install grout and see what type of grout and what color of grout we used here, make sure to keep your eyes peeled for my next video. Thanks for spending time with me on this floor and learning along with me. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and good luck on your projects.